that is much in due to our community, our entrepreneurs, our advisors, our mentors, our investors, and of course our staff. So we're very, very proud about that as Canadians. Speaking to that, we have an extremely strong presence and a place with Ryerson University, which is really a big part of our success and why we're able to do the things that we do. And in part, it's actually events like this that allow us to really focus in on learning and understanding that the young generation is really the generation that's going to be doing what's important for the future and why we need to focus on them as early as possible. And it's not necessarily looking at them just from the university age, rather looking at them from elementary and even before that, because we truly believe that entrepreneurship has no age. And I know that a lot of you, when you were young, just like myself, had a bit of entrepreneurship spirit within you. We all used to sell lemonade for 25 cents. For those who like to hustle a little bit more, would sell it for 75 cents. I know some of you would take your junk from your room and try to sell that for ridiculous prices. Meanwhile, you had no idea what the thing even did. But this is honestly part of the spirit of building out a culture of entrepreneurship, innovation, and creativity. We're very much invested in that as a university and as a leading incubator globally. And of course, this goes without saying, part of our model at Ryerson is something called zone learning, where now we are actually applying innovation and entrepreneurship across the board in all programs and faculties. And part of the mission here is to be able to make people understand that innovation, entrepreneurship does not live within business schools or engineering schools. It lives everywhere. Whether you're nutrition, science, photography, fashion, it can be really put across all different disciplines and programs. And that's important because we don't want to generalize entrepreneurship in one specific vertical. It needs to be looked at across the board on a global level. So we are rethinking, in our own way, curriculum. We're rethinking education. We're obviously rethinking careers and jobs, and we're rethinking how we start to engage with the young generation, Generation Z. And it's important for us because we truly do believe that this is the future that's going to be doing some things that are going to blow our socks right off. And if we think we saw some wonderful things already in this world, wait till you see what's going to be coming up. Because when I look at some of these young innovators who have been joining our programs with things like Basecamp over the past few weeks, it's been mind-blowing to see what they're able to do at an age like this. Where back in the day, when I was this old, this was the last thing on my mind. And it's impressive to see that they really do care about having social and economic impact in everything that they get their hands across and how they're building it. So that being said, we're very excited to have everybody here. And I got to give a quick special shout out to the DMZ staff, the events team, Jennifer and her team as well. But of course, one in particular person that's really helped bring this to life is Ahmed. I know he's probably running around. There he is. He's running around. I know it's been crazy for him. Thank you so much for putting this together, for all your hard work, for your initiative, and for your dedication in really seeing this through and through. It's wonderful. This is obviously a commitment from our side as a incubator and a university to continue this on. This is not a one-time only initiative. We see this as an ongoing process to support the futures of tomorrow, the futures of this country, and hopefully the futures that will put and continue putting Canada on the map. Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, so without further ado, let me introduce you to the Generation Z entrepreneurs that are going to be part of our panel. So first we have Harsh Shah. Harsh is the co-founder of Spit Strips, a reusable strip that can read blood alcohol levels so that individuals can make smarter decisions before making a life-altering one. Harsh, can I have a seat? Thank you. Harsh hopes to have Spit Strips in all campus bars to help reduce binge drinking and increase responsible behavior. Welcome. The second panel member is Jenna Petzak. Jenna is the co-founder of Classy Cyborgs, an app that can teach people who are visually impaired how to learn Braille. Jenna, you can have a seat. Classy Cyborgs have signed a number of partnerships, one of which is with the CNIB. Thank you, Jenna. The third panel member is Brennan Wong. Brennan is the co-founder of Pledges for Change, an online not-for-profit organization that donates $1 to a charity every time someone makes a pledge towards a cause. Within a year, Pledges for Canada has raised over $16,000. Sorry, that's Pledges for Change, $16,000. Thank you, Brennan. All right, let's get started. I'd like to welcome you all. We're going to start off with our first question. So my first question is, how were you introduced to the world of entrepreneurship? So Harsh, if you want to go first.
So Ever since I was a little kid, my dad showed me various principles that are found in entrepreneurship. So he showed me through finances, public speaking, and self-confidence. Now this really gave me a taste of what entrepreneurship was really like. And last year I joined Sage Canada. And here I was given the opportunity to join Spitstrips. And this is where I really found what growing a startup really felt like.
Jenna?
So for me, I guess it was more of we wanted to become incorporated after, and then we had this idea, so we decided why not we one. Basically, we met people and they introduced us more to
And it started as a school project, was that right?
more or less. Yeah.
I think as long as a quick mic check, press the buttons and the green light. Okay, do we all have a green light? All right, excellent. Brennan.
All right. So I actually got introduced to the world of entrepreneurship through a program called Shad Valley back in 2013 when I attended a program at McMaster University. And what was so exciting about this was that I had gone in and I thought that this program was just going to be about STEM learning. I was just going to learn about science, technology, whatnot. But we had this opportunity to participate in a design entrepreneurship project. And that was sort of my first taste at creating something that had something to do with impacting not only my community, but also had an opportunity to impact the world. And for me, just to be able to take part in this experience and really see what entrepreneurship could mean and what it could create, that was a really exciting experience.
That's great to hear. I have experience. I once TA'd with Shad Valley, actually, and the cohort of students that are there are incredible, and the passion and motivation to really create things that are going to better the world is pretty amazing. So my next question for all of you is, when you first started working with your product and your startup, did you face any doubt from your peers that you wouldn't be able to succeed because of your age? Harsh, you want to take that one first?
So unfortunately, we did obviously meet some skeptics, but we were and we still are very passionate about this issue, and we didn't take it to heart. We took it as a source of motivation to continue and make an impact on the world. And even though there are skeptics around the world, it's kind of obvious that you're going to meet one or two every day, but just never take it to heart and keep on going.
So it's different for us. We never really had that problem. Everybody was fully supportive of what we were doing. There were probably some doubts, but they never voiced it to us. So we
There were just side-eye looks and whispers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges that any young entrepreneur would face, and at least something that I faced as well when I was starting my own project, was the fact that you're a young person, you have so many conflicting things going on. You have to focus on school, you have to focus on extracurricular activities. So those internal challenges definitely exist. And I think that goes on well into university as well. But also just being part of a community that sort of wasn't open to young entrepreneurs, or wasn't really open to the fact that young people could do much other than focus on their education, focus on the things that were more traditional. So I would say the biggest challenge definitely was not being part of an ecosystem like the DMZ when I was a little toddler, right? But obviously, like, things are starting to change, which is great. But definitely the biggest challenge going through was trying to find that supportive community that was open to this idea of innovation.
Great, thank you. So my next question is, the skills of young entrepreneurs are sometimes underestimated when it comes to startups. How do you think we can change people's mindsets? So Harsh, maybe I can ask you first.
So in my opinion, the best way to spread this message around is through media. There's companies just like us who have a mission to change the world, but they don't get the opportunities like us. Their mission and their voice are not heard. By promoting these youth-led startups, you'll empower more students just like us and businesses just like us to step forward and make an impact on the world.
I have to agree, actually, but to add on, just to word of mouth is also good. So spreading around that people even younger than you are already making something, you can make that impact as well. Yes, there will be doubts, and there's gonna be people who don't believe you, but you know what? They're gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah, like I'll definitely have to agree with these two. Like, one of the biggest things that definitely could change is just by changing culture. And I think it's just understanding that young people have so many passions, and yes, we're idealistic at times, but for the most part, all we want to do is just create change for something that we've noticed is wrong. And by giving us that opportunity to continue moving forward with our idea, maybe providing that hour of mentorship here or there, something that might seem very minuscule to an adult that's been working in the industry for years could be big for a young entrepreneur. So by changing culture and by changing this understanding that young people actually want to have a say, they have something valuable to say, this is what's needed in order to support young entrepreneurs.
Thank you. Okay, so Harsh, this one's for you. Your startup, Spit Strips, offers a saliva-based alcohol indicator that can gauge a user's blood alcohol level. How will these strips be used to help individuals make responsible decisions when drinking?
So a bit of a backstory on how our company really started. Back on October 7th, 2015, Andrea Christidis was a student at Western University. She was coming home one night and she was hit head-on by a student drunk driver. She passed away. And this really affected all of us because she was an alumni at our high school. And through this, we realized that this is an issue that is really prevalent in today's society. And what I believe our mission is to make spit strips available to everyone at all times. So consumers alike, as well as bars, can use our spit strips to gauge your blood alcohol content. Now through this, you'll understand whether you're able to drive or not. By preventing drunk drivers from actually entering the road, we will actually help countless of lives across the world.
Thank you, Harsh. Jenna, your startup, Classy Cyborgs, teaches people who are visually impaired how to read Braille. Interestingly, though, only 10% of visually impaired children and adults know Braille. Why do you think this number is so low, and how does Classy Cyborgs make it easier?
So access to Braille is very limited. Like in York Region, there's one teacher in all of York Region teach all the blind students Braille, and also blind students are put into regular schools, so they're not only not getting enough access to Braille, they don't have the opportunity to practice over and over again.
And how does Classy Cyborgs make that easier?
So our app, the Treasure Box Braille, is a self-directed technology. So whether if their teacher only comes once every 2 weeks to their school, they can work on it at home or even during class. So this way we're making it so they have access to Braille whenever they need it.
That's great. And I think I saw that you got some mentorship from some NASA scientists as well.
Yes. So she's a professor at Georgia Tech, and she was Georgia Tech was developing a glove to teach the visually impaired how to play the piano using a vibrating glove. So we contacted them, and we found out that she was a NASA scientist. She worked on the Mars Range rover. So we were very excited about that when we got the contact.
That's amazing. Thank you, Jenna. So, Brennan, your startup, Pledges for Change, helps young people realize positive impacts are made when you commit to take action. What experiences first inspired you to take action through founding your own organization?
Yeah. So I was involved with a charity called Free the Children since grade 4. And just through those experiences in itself, it sort of changed my whole perspective on this idea of charity. Just because when I was growing up, I thought charity was all about how much money you could donate. It was all about how much you could financially give to support someone else. And yes, that's sort of a perspective of charity. But at the same time, on the flip side, I realized that what if we could just bring young people together and could empower them to start taking action instead? To take away the financial aspect of giving and rather empower them to use their own two hands to actually give tangibly. And so it was an experience I went on a trip to Ecuador in 2012, and I had an opportunity to witness something called a minga. So it's an Ecuadorian tradition where the entire community comes together to help support a common goal. And so just seeing this entire community literally run down the hill and just support us in helping us build out this project, it was sort of that turning point, that click that made me realize, you know what, it wasn't really about donating money. And I think a lot of young people think that when it comes down to charity. But it's all about how we can empower young people to think differently about giving back, think differently about philanthropy. And so that was sort of the inspiring moment where I realized, you know what, well, our Canadian volunteer sector, we have a problem. We have a lot of old people who are volunteering, and we don't have young people who feel like they can give back. They don't feel that there's any more meaningful or positive volunteer opportunities left for them to give. So how can we change the entire sector, or how can we change the mentality of young people to actually start thinking about different ways and more innovative ways of giving back to the community?
Brilliant. Thank you, Brennan. So this one's for the group. How has your education helped you survive the entrepreneurship ecosystem? Harsh, I'll start with you.
So being in an accelerated program at William & Mackenzie, we've been surrounded by brilliant individuals who believe that they can also make an impact on the world. So through these interactions inside school, outside of school, we've learned that you should always put your best foot forward. And no matter what the problem is, you should always try to solve it. And by meeting with all these individuals, we've made connections which will hopefully last a lifetime. And by having these connections, you understand that personally through Spitstrips, it's to stop drunk driving. And drunk driving affects everyone. It's not just a certain minority, it's everyone. Anyone can be hit by a drunk driver at any time. And seeing that we've made all these connections at school, you wouldn't want to lose them, would you? So that's one of the reasons that we kind of started this initiative as well, because of our peers and different education, in the sense that we should always try to do good in the world, never to use your opportunities in a bad way. So in that sense, we've really tried to push forward and make an impact on the world.
Thank you, Harsh.
So for us, it's different. We started when we were in elementary school, so our grades were 6 to 8 at the time. And there's not many programs in elementary school right now, or definitely not at my school. But we were a part of a competition, and that's how it helped us, because we were, through this club that was made at my school, we were able to welcome this far now.
And what was that competition?
It was called the First Lego League, or FLL. It's part of a company called First.
Brilliant. Thank you, Brennan.
Cool. Yeah, I think the thing that was most, or that helped me the most through an education lens, was that when I started this project, I was 15 years old. I was going into grade 11, and so obviously things were starting to pick up, get a little bit harder. But my teachers were always really open to sort of this idea that, you know what, like we all have conflicting priorities, and maybe this was something that I was super passionate about, something that I wanted to chase. And so when I had to skip, well, not skip, but I had to miss a test, and I had to just change around my schedule, they were really open to that. And just having that supportive body just through those really tough years when you're trying to think about what university you're going to, all those different challenges, and you have an educator that's open to sort of the stuff that you're really passionate about, that was the most helpful thing.
That's great. And building on top of that, do you think there is anything schools should be teaching youth about entrepreneurship and business that they're missing right now? Sash, I'll start with you.
So in my opinion, the crucial thing schools are missing at this current moment is to create opportunities yourself rather than wait for opportunities to pass you by. So being in school, you're surrounded by all these kids, all these teachers, but there's so many kids that they have to look over. They can't just pick on you and say, okay, can you do this? It'll help you further your education. You really have to go out and do it yourself. So being in the accelerated program, I've learned that everyone around me is doing things outside of schools I've never even thought of. Some are executive managers at Project 5K, others are DECA provincial officers, and this really inspired me to do something for myself. Not for school, not for anyone else, but for myself. And this is what schools should really teach, in the sense that if you have a dream, you should go by yourself and do it. Because what you learn along the way is more valuable than what anyone else can teach you.
Yeah, Jenna?
I think in schools they could, like, especially in middle school, so grades 7, 8, 6, 7, 8, they could have a 20-minute business class every week, just to introduce kids to business pretty much and to being an entrepreneur. Because I know if I didn't join the robotics club at my school, I would have no idea what this was, or I would have no idea what an entrepreneur was in general.
Yeah, and I think going off of Jenna's point, actually, just from a more high school perspective, I think by introducing this idea of design learning, this was something I was introduced to really like very recently, and it was just so interesting to see how the way you teach students can sort of unleash their potential. And it's this idea that if you give them a challenge and you actually allow them to ideate rather than have to sort of have the teacher in the front of the room and teaching the classroom, there's not really that conversation. But when you introduce an idea like design thinking or just something that's more collaborative in general, it really encourages the class to suggest new ideas and innovative ideas and really empowers them to actually start thinking more deeply about the issues that are being taught to them. So by just changing the dynamic of a classroom, you can already try and change the way that students learn, and I think that's a much more engaging way to teach students today.
Ooh, I have an example of that actually, because in my grade 9 geo room, my geo teacher actually he brought couches into our room, and was like, "All right, whoever wants to sit on the couch, there's 3 of you that's allowed. Whoever gets there first can have it." We're the first period of the class, so of course everybody wants to sleep in that class because he sits at the back of the room, and we're in high school, so it's first class. It's like, I don't know what time. It's like 8:50 or something in the morning. You're like, and it's like, if you stay awake during my class and you sit on the couches, then you'll be fine. If you fall asleep, then you're doomed. Good luck.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I know when, so I studied industrial design, which was design thinking before I started my company. And everything that you're saying resonates, from awareness to just businesses exist and you can too. And then the idea of prototyping, iteration, design thinking. I mean, they're so crucial right now to really bring those into the classroom to see where we can really have more of a conversation as opposed to just one-way instruction or information giving. So my next question is that startup life can be tough, and it requires passion and dedication, which is something you all share. But how do you deal with juggling both school and being an entrepreneur?
So I think the two key points I'd like to touch upon are time allocation and efficiency. Now, how do you get to that? So everyone knows that if you're assigned a task, you're going to finish it. But the real thing is, each person accomplishes a different task differently. Now, in my team, I found the weaknesses and strengths of each person. Now, through that, I can assign different roles and tasks for their strengths rather than their weaknesses. So finding the right person for the right job will save you a lot more time than the right person for the wrong job. Now, through this, we'll be able to use our time more efficiently, so then we can also focus on school at the same time.
Okay, so for my team, we have weekly meetings that we set aside, so it's repetitive, and we know that we have to be there, and we have a task to complete throughout the week. Because I know, especially with a team of 10, it's hard for us to get together with extracurriculars, with school, homework. Of course, homework would come first, but if our meetings are on Thursday, so on Thursdays, we know that we have to be there for our 2 hours, and then when we have time after our homework during the other days of the week, we should finish our task and what we're assigned to do.
Yeah, I think what the best thing about school in high school was that the day started at 8:30, it ended at 3:30, and you knew that was the schedule every single day. And so being able to sort of first understand that, you know what, school is structured, but what you do after can be unstructured. And so creating sort of an ideal schedule for you that works is number one. But number two, it's also about creating a culture around your project and setting idealistic goals that you can sort of be like, yeah, and like give up that time to actually feel empowered to start doing that instead. And I think like, unfortunately, you know what, we do have 24 hours in a day, 7 days in a week, and it's hard to change that. But what we can change is what we're passionate about and what we feel like we want to spend our time working on. And so knowing, number one, that the school schedule is sort of traditional, it's set, it's done, but knowing that 6 or 7 hours after the school day, you can spend however you like. The biggest thing for me was just being able to, I just felt like the project I was working on was definitely worth my time, and I had to give up stuff. But by setting that schedule and by setting those, again, like idealistic goals that made me feel really happy about achieving those goals, that was sort of how I tried to figure out how I could sort of set a schedule, how I could set my time wisely to put it towards school and my project.
That's great. So delegation, structure, and structured unstructuredness. Great. So where can young entrepreneurs like yourself find guidance and support with things such as business development, financing, and marketing? Things that I think everyone in the room probably shares wanting support in that.
So recently we completed, actually all of us, we completed Ryerson's Basecamp like last week. And by going through Basecamp, we found several resources we would never have had access to. So we found mentors, we found industry professionals, we found that they have 3D printers around that we could use. And in my opinion, the best way to gain access to all of these resources is through business incubators, such as Basecamp. And by providing more of these resources or business incubators around the city, it'll help more youth like us who don't have access to all these high clientele to really push ourselves to get there and then eventually grow a startup from there.
So I'm gonna have to agree with him. Basecamp was amazing, especially since there's not a lot of programs similar to it for young entrepreneurs. But I'd also like to shout out to Venture Lab, which worked with us a lot on a lot of our business things, and they're great people. They're people that you could go to, and I actually found out about Basecamp through them. Well, theoretically, the person who runs Venture Lab, Lucas Chang, he told David Kwok, who runs Basecamp, about us, and then David's like, "Do you guys want to come to this thing called Basecamp that we're running?" And then we accepted, and obviously now we're here.
Yeah, I think there's an ecosystem that's incredible that already exists for innovation. It's just about how can we create channels that are accessible and fun for young people to tap into this ecosystem. And so one of the biggest challenges for me sort of early on was how can I find people within this huge network that would be able to help me on my project. And so I think in terms of being able to create those channels and find those people and work with those people, but also on the flip side, have those people also willing to help and understand that youth innovation is sort of the direction where we're headed. These are the ways and these are the opportunities to find those resources.
Awesome, thank you. So a few more questions. My next one is, what advice would you give an entrepreneur your age?
So if I were to meet someone at my age, the first thing I would tell them is actually to learn from other people's mistakes. As common as it may sound, it will save you a lot of time and effort by not going through the same mistakes other people did. So a recent thing that we found was certain methods of reaching people were not effective. And this was solved through other companies which were more established than us. And they spent millions of dollars and hours just finding this data themselves. But what we did was we didn't go through that method because we knew that there was no, it wasn't greener on the other side essentially. And so this saved us a lot of time and effort by not going through with this. Another thing I would tell him or her would be to keep your team small or a manageable size. Because last year in Spitstrips, we had approximately 16 to 17 people, and that didn't work out too well because it was really hard to manage everyone. So it's really to keep your core team, your best team essentially. And finally, I'd like to say, no matter what anyone says, you should do what you believe in and what you're passionate about because that's truly what's going to accelerate your business to the best.
For me, it would be definitely stay passionate. If you're not passionate, then don't bother because you don't have the proper mindset to go through with it. And then my second advice would be, just because you're too young doesn't mean you can't do it. And mainly because I know a lot of people think because, oh, I'm too young, I can't do it. It's like, well, I'm probably younger than you and I'm doing it, so, you can too.
Yeah, I think what I would say is think big, think different, fail a lot, and drink a little bit of bubble tea. The reason why the reason why I say this is because I think one of the biggest challenges and problems with young people is that they sort of are in school. It's a traditional environment again, and there's all these constructions and these boxes that they feel limited to. And a lot of the time, it's even also like their parents or their teachers or people in the community that are sort of like, oh, you should wait off on this. And I think what made my project the most successful was the fact that I was willing to look a little bit ahead, look a little bit further, and go the extra mile. And yes, like sometimes that led to failures. But at the same time, it also led me to new opportunities. And I think by being able to flip the switch and turn it around from failure to opportunity was something that was really special. And of course, like celebrate those wins, celebrate those successes. Because as a young person, what you're doing is honestly incredible. And celebrate with a little bit of bubble tea. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, that concludes our panel discussion. Can we please give a round of applause to our incredible entrepreneurs? So thank you so much, Harsh, Jenna, and Brennan. The fact that you're running these businesses and putting obviously your heart and your time and your passion behind it is amazing. And thank you for being brave and getting on stage and telling us all about it.